Good morning. I come to you from Colorado, so it's nice to be here, and I'm glad I missed all the snow that we've had. When I moved to Colorado, all of our friends from Indiana said, "Oh, you're going out where all the snow is." And we live in Colorado Springs, and literally, my kids have more snow days in Indiana than they do in Colorado Springs. And so what happens is it snows, but the sun comes out and it's gone by 10 a.m. And very, very different. And so I followed with interest the snow and all of this weather type of issues you all have had here. So I'm glad when I saw the weather. Thank you, Dr. Foley and Dr. Chen, for inviting me to be here today to speak about something that I'm very passionate about. That is the health of adolescents. When I finished my pediatric training now almost 30 years ago, I went into pediatrics because I love children, I love families, I even love teenagers, which puts me in a very unique and different group of people. But I think our teenagers are amazing. And I believe that adolescents, that we investing in their lives and in their health is a very, very worthwhile thing. And I am encouraged by interacting with the adolescents that are part of our program, because we do have students and adolescents that are capable and ready, particularly if they have adults that go alongside of them and that set a standard for them that gives them something to look forward to. And so what I want to speak to today, just for a few moments, and let me stop a minute and say, there are some tablets at each of your table, and if there are questions that come up through my presentation this morning, please write them down. We're leaving some time at the end for me to answer questions, and the facilitators will be able to pick those up and bring those up to me to answer our questions at the end. What I'm hoping today is that if you are in a group of people here who are terrified about losing adolescents, or you don't really enjoy that, I'm hoping that by the time we finish here, that will change, and that you will recognize the challenges that we face when we're talking to adolescents, but how exciting this group is a group. I'm thinking that probably you are here because you like working with adolescents, and so I'm hoping I'm speaking and teaching the choir today. But hopefully, when we're done, you'll have that same sense. And to recognize, too, that the public health intervention that we use for the other high-risk behaviors should be used to address high-risk sexual behaviors in adolescents. And that the outcomes are best when those risks are avoided rather than reduced in adolescents. Now, what are the challenges that we see sometimes in adolescent health? And there are presenters throughout the rest of the day today that are going to go into each of these areas more specifically, but we know that brain development isn't complete and that the decision-making areas are immature. I remember when this brain research started coming out many years ago, and at the time I had adolescents in my home, and as I was lecturing and talking about the fact that the prefrontal cortex wasn't fully developed yet, and so that the reasoning, they're making healthy decisions, my children started saying things like, "Well, Mom, it's just my prefrontal cortex." And okay, that is not an excuse for that behavior. That is an explanation, but it is not an excuse. And so, they are starting to pick up on this research and recognizing that, but it can't be used as an excuse for their behavior. We also know that the mental development is trying to change from being so concrete to becoming more analytical, and we have to teach them how to do that. Because it's a lot easier to be concrete than it is to really think outside the box. And what if I do this, what might happen? When I was growing up, my parents, in fact, it was something that was really quite annoying. Whenever there was a decision to be made, my mother would ask us to sit down and make a list of the pros and cons. And it got to be very annoying. That exercise was something that stuck with me and has stuck with me throughout my life. Because if you think about consequences before an action, you are much more likely to make a better decision. The problem is taking the time to stop and think and making that list. And then again, the emotional development that is going between wanting to be independent, but yet meeting those boundaries to set up a protected and a a safe place for our adolescents as they are growing up. And you know, if you have dealt with a room full of adolescents, that you can have adolescents in the room that range between 11 and 32 years of age. Their emotional development can be anywhere from 8 or 9 to maybe 15. And it's very different. You know, they may look like they are 15, but really their emotional level of development is much more like the higher side. And so there are some unique challenges that come when you're dealing with adolescents. The other thing to understand is that adolescents are wired to take risks. And you will hear in the lecture later on about brain development, the reasoning for that, and the reason why that they do take risks, and the reward system built into their brain and dopamine levels that give them that reward. And so they need the opportunity to take risks. They need the opportunity to assume responsibility. If you think about our culture today, how different it is now than it was maybe 20 years ago. When I was growing up, there weren't any car seats. I know I don't look that old to you, but I distinctly remember standing up in the middle of the front seat. And when we would come to a stop, my father's arm would go like this across my middle. That's the way we rode in the car when I was growing up. There weren't any car seats. Think about the advances we have had in safety, and that's good, but what it has also done is narrow the area of risk that is available for adolescents to growing. They need the opportunity to take some risks, to assume responsibilities, to experience rewards, and more importantly, to acknowledge the consequences and own the consequences of the decisions that they make. Now, what are some healthy risk-taking types of activities that adolescents can be involved in? When you think about there's competitive sports, there are extreme sports, drama clubs, choir, mentoring programs, community service programs, academic pursuits, band, orchestra. All of these provide adolescents with an opportunity to take a risk and to find success and to grow as young people. We also are all too familiar sometimes, and I think sometimes focus more on the unhealthy risk-taking behavior that we see. And those of you in this room that are in the public health field know that there are 5 risk-taking behaviors in adolescents that are studied most often in most of the studies, and attention and prevention is addressed to these 5 areas: violence, alcohol, sex, drugs, and cigarettes. I don't know how many of you are familiar with youth behavior risk survey, but I'm going to briefly touch on this, and in some of the other seminars are going to go more into depth. But lest you think that these high-risk behaviors are not a problem in our community and in our nation, if you look at the data from 2013, 35% of our adolescents who are in 9th to 12th grade in the United States, 35% of them had a drink of alcohol on 1 or more days in the past 30 days. So it's 1 in 3. 21% of them had 5 or more drinks in a row or binge drinking within the past month before they took the survey. If you look at marijuana, 23% of them who use marijuana 1 or more times in the past 30 days. Now that number is higher in Colorado, unfortunately. It is disconcerting to me that the first thing that most people say to me when they know I'm from Colorado is to ask me about how am I smoking marijuana, how I'm enjoying the hot, state. Again, that's a different topic that we need to touch on today, but it's a significant issue with the adolescents in our state, and I believe that we will see consequences in the not too distant future. 6% had used cocaine 1 or more times in their life, and 23% had been offered or given or sold the drug on school property in the past 12 months. 23% one and two. And what we consider a safe place, it's really not safe. What about sexual activity? 47% of high school students say that they have had sex. Okay, now that is, you recognize that that's a minority? Okay, that means the majority of high school students are choosing not to be sexually active. I realize it is a small majority, but I think that we should celebrate that because that number has increased in the past 8 to 10 years. 34% of them are still sexually active, meaning they have been engaged in sexual intercourse prior to the survey. 98% of them have had 4 or more sexual partners in their lifetime. Now, does anybody in this room think it is a healthy choice for adolescents to have 4 or more sexual partners? Because if you think it is a healthy choice, then this conversation changes. But I would tell you, based on social science research and based on pictures I have seen from my personal experience, it is not a healthy choice for them. And so we, as healthcare workers, we as public health workers, we as educators, counselors, social workers, whatever area you are in, it behooves us to begin to look at this as a serious health problem. Because too often people pass this off as a moral problem. And I would argue with you that this has become a public health issue in our communities. 6% of them, their first sexual encounter was before the age of 13. Now, I know that things have changed, and I know that I'm getting old. But I am pretty sure at the age of 13 or 12, I had no idea about this. Now, I was the one out in the community with my mother's nursing books, giving everybody an address. Much to the chagrin of my mother and the neighbors around me. But this is a different world we live in. And 22% of them were under the influence of alcohol and drugs the last time they had sex. So anybody who says that these high-risk behaviors are not linked to each other is not looking at research. And when you avoid one, you are likely to avoid the other ones as well. And so again, that needs to be a focus that we look at. Now, how do we effectively address these behaviors as we approach from whatever area we're looking at? I would say to you this morning that there are a number of arenas that this needs to be addressed in, and it needs to be addressed the same way to be effective. So what the parents are saying should be the same thing that the health teachers are saying, should be the same thing that they hear from their teachers, other teachers. When they go to the doctor, it's the same thing they should be hearing from the doctor. When they turn on the television, it's the same thing they should be hearing on the television. Now again, I understand this is a very big task that we have in front of us. But we know that health messages that are repeated from more than one sector have much more effectiveness. And so again, as we are looking as a community here, what difference can we make in our community? That's what we look for. Make sure that in the different sectors of our community, the same message is being presented. Now, I thought this would be easy to define what public health was, but I found it wasn't. When I tried to Google public health and definition, I came up with, there were probably 6 or 7 different variations of what is public health. And so, all of those I condensed down to 4 different points that I believe encompass what we are trying to do to increase the health of the adolescents in our communities. One is to prevent disease, the other one is to promote health. Encourage a change in unhealthy behavior, and focus on groups of people or communities rather than just individual people. So again, there are some organizations that look at public health and focus on one or more of these. Some focus on all of them. There's a different approach. But for the sake of what we're going to do here today, let's assume that all of this is what our scope is. That we are interested in increasing the health of the adolescents in our community. We want them to be healthier. And so from that standpoint, we're going to approach this from a public health approach. And when you look at the public health approach to most disease processes, there's a 4-step process that occurs. First of all, you have to decide if there's a problem. Do we have a problem in our community? We do have a problem in our community. So what is the risk factor? What is the cause of that problem? Let's peel back the layers, so to speak, and get right down to what is the root cause of this issue. Then we have to develop intervention. And then at the end, we implement our intervention, we evaluate how did it work, we make changes, we go back, and we repeat that cycle over and over again. Well, let's look at what type of intervention we typically do for public health problems.